the Silverton Country Museum presents two rare documentaries. The color photos you see were shot by the late Jack Fish, longtime bakery operator in Silverton, during 1954 at the time of our Silverton Centennial. We also have, in black and white footage, 1926 newsreel shot at that time by the late June D. Drake of Drake's Brothers Studios. There was, when the Silverton Opera House burned in April 1935, all the newsreels except the black and white version were destroyed in that big inferno at that time. Okay, this is the Silverton Train Depot, built in 1906. It's see in North Water Streets. This is Silverton Union High School, built in 1939-40. The street in front, Schlater Street, was named after the mayor of the time, Zetta Schlater, Silverton's first woman mayor. We don't know who this woman is, however. This is Julius Alm's store, built in 1908, and we believe this is Julius Alm. Here we have Silverton City Council in the early 1950s, in front of Silverton City Hall. And here's the Palace Theater, built in 1939. And here we have the Ames Hardware, later Carl Handy Hardware, and looking at Main Street. And here's some rare footage of Silver Falls Timber Company, founded in 1917. During the 1920s, it was the largest producing lumber mill in the Willamette Valley. Operated up till 1945, right after World War II. This scene was taken on South Water Street, the entry to Silverton sign put up by the Silverton Lions Club. And in that previous shot we saw Cliff Dickerson of that club. Now these scenes shot by Jack Fish show the 1954 Silverton Centennial Parade. Silverton had its roots in the town of Milford, which was founded in 1846, 2 miles up Silver Creek from Silverton, by John Barger and James Smith. They operated a small sawmill there, but as early as 1850, they decided that was too hilly of land, so John Barger got a claim on South Water Street and called his settlement Bargerville. There was a post office, a store, everything you need for a small town. And Silverton itself, the present plat, was platted by Polly Crandall Coon, who came here with the Crandall wagon train over the old Oregon Trail. Her husband died shortly after arrival in Silverton, so she was willed the property. She's credited with naming Silverton after Silver Creek, and she also platted the streets. Silver Creek was named after James Silver Smith, that original founder of Milford, co-founder of Milford. Now this scene we just saw now showed Fisher's Flouring Mill, founded in 1900, and a lot of these scenes depict early Silverton. It's early churches, early businesses, and agriculture. Again, here's a tribute to lumbering, which was the main industry in the early days, and subsequently agriculture is the main industry. It's been documented that in Silverton's history there's been over 60 lumber mills, both independent and commercial. Everything from a one-man operation to the big Silver Falls Timber Company that employed well over 3,000 men during its time. The Centennial Parade saw a large participation from Silverton school children. We believe this gentleman just passing is Charles DeGeer, who had DeGeer Dairy on the site of Oak Knoll housing development near Ross IGA. Again, young Silverton school children are giving tribute to our pioneers. These scenes were taken on North 1st Street near a copy of the Silverton Appeal. That depicts the Pony Express. That sign is in memory of Coolidge and McLean Bank, founded in 1880. That sign was Prunes, Scott's Mills Pride, Hot Basket, strawberries, which were big in the Silverton Hills. Now the Christmas tree is the main industry in the Silverton Hills. Beans in early Silverton were largely pole beans picked by hand. Silverton Fire Department, known as Eagle Hook and Ladder Company in the early days, was founded in 1880 and is still in operation. Here's the Mount Angel contingent depicting the history of Mount Angel. And this is a tribute to Homer Davenport's book, The Country Boy. Homer wrote his book in 1910, shortly before his death in May of 1912 in New York City of pneumonia. Homer's book is a valuable insight into the early history of Silverton and its characters and its people and the kind of humor that existed at the time. Many quilts came over the old Oregon Trail to Silverton. And the quilts that still exist today from that time are prized possessions. Here's some of the early buggies that may have been in Silverton in the early days. It's too bad that Silverton didn't have a museum earlier than 1974 to preserve a lot of these items you see in this parade. But we've come a long way since 1974. And if you haven't visited the Silverton Country Museum, the museum is open 1 to 4 Thursdays and Sundays through October. And special times by appointment. Call our curator, Betty Holeen, at 873-4766 if you desire to have a group or a special visit. Now here's this. We're starting into some of the black and white footage that June Drake shot in 1926. June had his first studio on Water Street where Fish's Bakery is today. That burned in 1908. He built another small shack, and in 1911 his permanent studio was built. It operated up till the 1960s. Now we're looking at the school children of Eugene Field School once again. This school was built in 1918 and was about 8 years old at the time of this footage. The scenes at this school haven't changed in the years. We believe we're looking at some of the early faculty members of the school. In these times, it was forbidden for a female teacher to be married. Play still goes on the field of Eugene Field School, much as you see in these pictures. Adjacent to Eugene Field School were the Washington Irving and Emerson School buildings, one which stood at the present site of Silverton Christian Church, First Christian Church. That building was knocked down in the 1960s to make way for the church. Eugene Field School is actually the third school on its site. The first was built there in 1862, and that building still stands at 3rd and Park Streets near Unger Funeral Chapel, and should be preserved as probably the earliest freestanding building still existing in Silverton. This is the first Silverton High School. Bonfires at homecoming were long a Silverton tradition, as they were throughout our nation. Here's an early Silverton football team, 1926. Organized high school sports started at Silverton High in about 1908. And there was basketball, football, and baseball. These football scenes were shot at Eureka Acres Field on the hill up West Main Street, where Eureka Acres housing development is today. It was later the sites of the Silverton Eagles baseball team, the baseball team of the Silver Falls Timber Company. They began playing there this very year, 1926, played there till 1936 when McGinnis Field was built at our present high school. 1936, they began to be known as the Silverton Red Sox, and in 1939, that baseball team took 3rd place in the national semi-pro tournament in 100-plus degree weather in Wichita, Kansas. The most famous player from that baseball team was Johnny Pesky, retired in Florida. He was a batting champion for the Boston Red Sox in the 1940s, and in 1963 managed the Boston Red Sox. He came back to Silverton in 1978 for a Silverton Red Sox reunion. Again, agriculture next to timber in the early days was the main industry here. We had cattle production, milk production, swine production, and plus our crops. Scotts Mills area was a big area for the prune industry, and the Columbus Day storm that we had in 1962 blew down a lot of the old prune dryer built barns, which were very picturesque. Hops, this north of Silverton, still remains a very big industry, but in those days they were hand-picked, and the hop picking crews would go out there every July, and it would be quite a scene. And the youth has always been involved because Silverton has largely been based around the farm family. The Smith Hughes Club, the forebearer of the FFA program, was founded in 1926 at Silverton High School by Warren Crabtree, and he did a lot to promote the agriculture among the youth in our community. As you can see, they didn't cut off the horns in those days. So handling the cattle could be potentially pretty dangerous. Here's the swine we were talking about. If they were piggy banks, they'd probably be worth their weight in the money. Here we are, some early scenes of Silver Falls Timber Company. These scenes were probably taken in the heyday of the company, the 1920s, when Silverton was a very, very lively community known from afar. The logging railroad stretched 35 miles into the timber belt, going up Powers Creek towards the back of Silver Falls, the present site of Silver Falls State Park. And as you notice in these decks, all the lumber was old growth, and part of the demise of Silver Falls Timber Company was the lack of replanting practices that we have today. Another factor in the closure of the mill in 1945 was the manpower that went to World War II. These men you see here were called pond monkeys, and they're working on what we know today as Webb's Lake out on Hobart Road, which was the old logging pond for Silver Falls Timber Company. Silver Falls Timber Company was actually the second large timber company in North Silverton. Silverton Lumber Company was founded just south of this mill in 1907, and for several years they operated simultaneously. Clark Gable, the famous actor known in Silverton as Billy Gable, worked 5 months at Silver Falls Timber Company Mill in 1922. He resided in a boarding house called Cottage Hotel on Main Street, where the commercial bank is today, and dated Francis Dorfler, who lived on Dorfler Road south of Silverton going towards State. And that house still stands today where he visited. This is a little known fact. On the mill site there was a skeet shooting range set up, and annually the mill company would invite hunters from throughout the community to participate in the annual turkey shoot. And we know in later years near Silver Falls State Park there was a Silver Falls Gun Club, and also a year after these photos were taken, the Silverton chapter of the Isaac Walton League was founded, and they founded a skeet shooting range out in the Bethany area. And the Isaac Walton League was a group of hunters and fishermen dedicated to preserving the game and the environment, which was very forward thinking today. We don't know if this is him, but Mike Stewart had the honor of bringing out the first load of logs for Silverton Timber Company, Silver Falls Timber Company, in 1917, and bringing out the last in 1945. His daughter was Evelyn By, longtime secretary and former student body president at Silverton High School, now deceased. Again, here we are at the Silverton Train Depot. And here's Coolidge and McLean Bank, their new building built in 1923, presently the site of Silverton First Interstate Bank. Coolidge and McLean Bank, Silverton's first bank, was founded in 1880. Here's the Samuel Ames Hardware in the old Wolf building, constructed in 1890. We believe the man coming up here with the thinning hair is Samuel Ames, father of Norris Ames. They operated as a father-son operation there for many years on the corner of Water and Main Streets. In the background is the old Silverton Opera House with Palace Theater enclosed. That big building burnt in a blaze in April 1935. Here's an early Silverton constable, possibly Mike Dolan, Lewis Yates, or Simrall. And we don't have the name on this gentleman, but we believe he's the principal of Eugene Field School, shown quite prominently in these rare footages. This is a scene of a house taken on West Main Street Hill. Both the houses you can see in this footage are still standing. These photos, we believe, were taken just south of Silverton Country Museum, presently a mustard-colored house, but we don't know the name of the people in the film. If anybody watching knows the name in this film, please contact our curator again, Betty Holeen, at 873-4766, as she has been very good about documenting the historical, many hundreds of historical photos at the museum. The photos that are at the museum have been preserved in acid-free materials for long time preservation. We're constantly taking strides to better preserved items there. Then, just as now people love to ham it up for the camera as these young people are. And again, if anybody knows this family, please call our museum so we can get it documented. We believe these photos were taken on North Water Street next to the Wolford Hotel, presently the Silverton Bed and Breakfast. Could be Dr. Simmons. Do you know? Silverton Airport was founded in 1917 as the first registered airport in Oregon. Founded in 1917 because of World War I, and it also served as a military field during World War II. It was considered a backup field should our country be attacked. During the Roaring 20s, the site was also the site of Silverton Air Circuses held annually that brought big crowds out to the airport to see the daring stunts. Silverton also received mail service through here, and in September of 1927, after Charles Lindbergh's May flight to Paris, he made a pass over this field and dropped leaflets before he went on to Salem to have lunch with the mayor and fly on to Medford that day. He started his day in Seattle. Many people came out to see Lucky Lindy. Unfortunately, the airport is no longer in operations, but strides are being made to start it again. This is Silverton's first steamroller used on Silverton streets. Silverton streets first started to be paved in 1910. Before that, they were muddy, mucky mud. But railroad tracks did run up Water Street to the Fisher's Flouring Mills. In 1906, during the when San Francisco had its famous earthquake, the flour company sent a box load of relief supplies to the stricken city. Here's a view of Silverton, probably taken from Eureka Street. Now these scenes are of Evergreen Golf Course. No, not Mount Angel's Evergreen Golf Course, Silverton's. It was located on Finley Road, south of Silverton. It was a 9-hole golf course, and the clubhouse that you see in the background is presently the home of Kathy and Herb Barnes. But in the days that the Evergreen Golf Course was in operation, you could see the most elite of people and cars going along Cascade Highway and turning on Finley Road to go play golf here. We believe the golf course closed about the time of World War II, and at the time Felix Wright, Silverton turkey grower, bought the property and raised turkeys here. This is the Silverton Armory, still a familiar sight on South Water Street. This building was built in 1920 and operated until 1923. Over the years, Silverton Armory was the home of several different battalions. We see one here during peacetime in 1926. And actually the scenes at drills didn't change much over the years. And we can see even in the 1920s they had a good sense of humor. How dry I am, they sing. The Silverton Armory was also the site of dances, boxing matches, wrestling matches, and also initiation services or ceremonies for new members of Silverton American Legion Delbert Reeves Post 7. Presently, Silverton Armory is becoming the property of the city of Silverton, and the hopes are here in 1994 that someday become a Silverton Community Center and be used for other purposes such as a latchkey program or daycare program. This is just across the street from our Silverton Country Museum. Now, does anybody know what this is? We believe it was taken right across the street from the old Silverton Opera House at the present site of Hatteberg Chevron Station. May have been a station put there right before Hatteberg's. Next door was Drake's Brothers Studio, and right down next door to that was the present site of Silverton Flower Shop, formerly owned by Allen's Brothers Garage. This scene is still familiar today, out beyond Mallory's Dairy on Bethany Road. Cars then, as now, still get stuck here. But the scene coming up looked more like some kind of an auto accident. Maybe this gentleman had a few too many. Allen's Brothers Depot Garage and Machine Shop operated a wrecker in Silverton for many years, but we don't know where this wrecker comes from. Again, if anybody knows, call our curator. Hopefully she'll be deluged with phone calls. Does anybody recognize where this is? We're not sure at this time. This is J.C. Penney Company that operated from the 1920s up till the early 1980s on Oak Street. But we believe the first site may have been on Water Street because we see railroad tracks. This is Santa Claus. Notice his dress and the Norwegian influence. Here he passes out candy to the kids at Eugene Field School. The pointed hat is very typical of a Norwegian Santa Claus. Especially if you watch the recent Olympics, you saw this kind of dress. Good.